want to do a quick, no, well, this won't be quick, there's too much for this to be quick, but I want to do a bit of a dive on the story of Cain and Abel, and potentially the link to the story of the prodigal son, which will be quite a ways into this particular take, but that's where I'm kind of heading. So if you don't know the story of Cain and Abel in the Old Testament, then very briefly, it's basically Adam and Eve had two sons. Abel was the firstborn and Cain was his brother. They grew up. Abel sacrificed his sheep. He was a shepherd, so he sacrificed his sheep to God, and God accepted the sacrifice and said that it was good, and Abel's life was amazing. Cain sacrificed the fruit of the ground, which is what he worked at, but God rejected that sacrifice, and Cain's life was pretty miserable. So Cain was pretty upset over that. So he didn't like the fact that he thought he sacrificed the same thing as Abel, whatever the thing was that he worked at, but God rejected his sacrifice. So he went out and murdered his brother because of that. So he wasn't happy with the outcome, so he killed his brother so he wouldn't have to deal with it. He'd be like, well, he's gone now, so you're going to have to just take my sacrifice. So that's the story in a nutshell. And I think there's so much to this. So this is not like a parable. So you're supposed to read this as like this actually happened, but the lesson, there's still a lesson in it. It's still a very philosophical, analogous lesson to us as humans. So Cain and Abel were the first actual humans. So Cain, instead of asking the question or coming to the conclusion that, oh, if God rejected my sacrifice, then it must have been the case that my sacrifice wasn't good enough. But instead he thought that God was just playing favorites and rejected his sacrifice based purely on he liked Abel more than him. And that's kind of like the way we go about our lives, if you think about it. I'm sure everybody's had some version of when someone tells them good news and they go, oh, that's great, but in your mind you're thinking, oh, I hate that person because their life is going so well. Why is my life not going as well as that? How come they get all the good things and I'm always left with this, crappy, hard life, and I never get a break and I'm always being punished? So that's the same thing. So me and you would much more quickly kind of make assumptions about a person and how they got to their good life, and that they didn't earn it, that you deserve it more, instead of looking at it as, well, I must not be doing everything I could be doing and should be doing to get to where I want to get to. And yeah, that's how that story reads when you dig into it a bit. So I don't think that's too hard to understand, especially if you're honest enough to remember any of those situations. I certainly can, and I still do it. It's kind of a human proclivity to jump to that conclusion that, well, if they got there and I didn't, it must be because they got a helping hand and an unfair advantage to me, instead of putting the onus on you to go, well, maybe I just need to do more work. Maybe there's things that I avoided doing because I was afraid of how hard they were, or I was afraid of, if I really threw myself into this properly, that means I'm admitting that I want something. So what if I try this and I go all in but I don't get it? So I'm just going to give a slightly smaller sacrifice, and I'll see how that goes. So you're pretty much saying like that's like saying you're sitting on the fence. You're like, I know what I really should give up to get here, I know what I really should be, throwing myself into head first, but that's too scary on too many levels. So either I'm going to say I don't really want that thing that's really hard to get. I'm just going to say I want something easier to get. And if you follow that path, you might get that thing that's easier to get because it's easier to get. But then you'll get resentful of that thing because it's like, I'm not satisfied with this. How come? How come I'm not satisfied with this? Even though I've been, trying to get this for so long. For decades I've been working towards this, and now I have it and it doesn't satisfy me. Well, it's because you purposely went down the easier path because it was easy and because you were afraid of the commitment to do the hard thing. So now you're bitter and resentful, but you're not pointing that bitterness and resentment at yourself. You're pointing it at everybody else in the world, saying it's unfair against me. All these people must have it easier than me. That's why they can do all these things. And that's true to an extent, but not of everybody. Some people are rich, so they find they can do things a lot easier. They don't have the financial constraints that maybe you have. But someone else possibly had worse financial constraints than you have and still made it further than you did. So you can't blame them for that. They didn't get an unfair advantage. You did, but you chose the wrong one because you wanted to play it safe. How that can be loosely tied to the prodigal son, maybe not that loosely actually. The theme is still there, but it's not exactly a mirror story because there are two brothers, but both of the brothers in this story end up behaving like Cain at different points. So the prodigal son, he says to his dad, who owned land and a farm, and the two sons work there, and the son is of an age that he thinks he's ready to go out into the world. So he says, hey, you're eventually going to die and I'm going to get inheritance, so give me my half and I'm on my way, because there must be a better life out there for me and I'm smart enough to do that. So the dad says, yeah, okay, no problem, whatever you want, here you go. And he goes off and he squanders it. Parties, prostitutes, the whole lot. Ends up with no money, living like, pretty much homeless, like a vagrant, and then ends up coming back to his dad's ranch, farm, whatever, and says like, I need to come back, I've squandered all my money, whatever. But the dad doesn't make him earn his way back. The dad runs to him when he sees him coming around the bend. He runs to him and celebrates that he's home, saying, I'm so glad you're home, don't worry about it, let's go into the house and we'll be happy families again. So much so that he throws a party to celebrate. So that's the first son, and you can see his selfishness and arrogance to think that he doesn't need his dad's wisdom anymore. He's, he is in charge of his life, so much so that he can demand money that isn't his yet. It's an assumption that he's going to get that inheritance. So that's his kind of arrogance there. The Cain came out in him. But the second son then that stayed, he hears the party going on and he's like, what's going on? And someone says, oh, your brother came home. And he's like, what the hell? Why are they throwing a party? He left, he took all the money, left, squandered it, and I stayed and I did all the work and I broke my back and I didn't get to do all that, and he just gets welcomed home and he gets to come back and just slot right back in. That's not fair. So there's Cain again. The son is saying I've sacrificed all this for you and I didn't leave. Why didn't you throw a party for me? And yeah, it's that like begrudging emotion that again we all can relate to. We begrudge people's like what's that word? Redemption. So someone that you know to be, you know, untrustworthy, unreliable, hedonistic, you know, you can think of, you know, a Hollywood star, like you could probably name 20 of them off the top of your head, who led a very, let's say, unsavory life in one time in their life, and then they come out and they say, oh, I found God and I'm going to change my ways. And what do? We do the same thing that their brother did when he heard the party going on. We say, that's bullshit, that's not fair, you can't just come back, you can't just change your ways. So like on one hand, we didn't want them behaving that way. We said, hey, the way you're behaving is not good and it doesn't align with my values, and I'm gonna, you know, make that known. And then on the other hand, when they offer a redemption, you know, and look, fair enough, you want to be skeptic about it, that's fine. I think that's a smart thing to do. It's like, okay, well, let's see how it plays out. But you have to at least hope that they've changed their ways to align with your values, because you, after all, you think your values are correct. You think your values are the right way to live. So you should be happy. You should be like, oh, that's great, you found the right way to live. But instead what we do is we don't want them, it's like we don't want them to share it. We don't want to share it with them. We're like, no, you made your bed, you're not coming back in, you're not coming into this house. So on one hand we're lambasting them for not living well, and then on the other hand we're saying, well, if you want to change your ways, I'm not going to let you. I don't want you to. Now here's the harsh take on this. The only reason that anyone would do that, and I include myself in this, I'm not a saint by any means, the reason that we do that, where we kind of reject someone coming into redemption, is because if they stay in their box of being an immoral, delinquent, degenerate, we can use them as an avatar for everything that's wrong with us and the world at large, so that we don't have to look at ourselves and see it in us.